And take your Bibles and turn to Genesis, if you can find it this morning. Genesis. It's real close to the beginning of the Bible, okay? While you're turning there, I hope you're in a good spirit. I know it's midterms. How many of you, all your midterms are gone, done, finished? Let me see your hands. How many of you have one right after chapel? Let me see your hands. Okay. I hope you concentrate hard today. Some of you need a compliment this morning. Would you just turn to the person next to you right now, give them a great big smile and say, "I love the way you fixed your hair this morning." Would you tell them that, please? Yeah, some people have a little easier time than others, huh, Doc? Yeah, you do. Genesis chapter 49. Genesis 49. And again, we would love for you to stop and pick up an application. Remember, that does not commit you. It simply says you're praying. And I hope you should never, ever be afraid to pray about anything. And just to think how God could use you for a summer in the lives of, 10 weeks, 7 or 8 campers each week, 80 teens. And, God can use that. And don't waste your summers, okay? My whole life is teens, as you know, and I talk to so many, and they come back to school or go back to college. I say, "Hey, how'd your summer go? You got a job, and you had too much free time, and too much free time, it's easy to get into sin, isn't it? And then so you work real hard for a couple of weeks before you come back to school, get all right with God and stuff, so you can do okay again. Well, if you don't have some structure and have the opportunity to concentrate on the things of God and pour your life into others, it's tough to stay strong in the Lord. And I'd really encourage you, don't waste your summers. As I said yesterday, you only got 2 or 3 of them. And then you're going to be married with your 10, 12 kids, and you'll never be able to do it again, okay? Serve God with your life. Genesis 49, verse 3. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Has your dad ever sat you down, looked in your eyes, and just said, "I am so proud of you"? I mean, you just, when Mom and I think about you guys, it almost makes us cry. You want to be in Christian school and Christian college, and you want to serve God. I am so proud of you. This is kind of the setup of what's going on here. We need to live our lives in a way that would please our parents. We need to strive to live a life that we can please God and make our parents proud. Even the Lord Jesus Christ. When God looked down, He said, "This is my beloved Son, Son I love very, very much, in whom I am well pleased." Jacob had 12 sons. We know a lot about Joseph, but we don't know a whole lot about Reuben. He had 12 sons. I know you understand, remember the story, how he fell in love with this girl named Rachel. And the love that he had for her, it was 7 years. In fact, the Hebrew word for that word love, transliterated, is A-H-A-B-A. Say it with me. Ready? Ahaba. Say it. Ahaba. And when I preach couples retreats, I make the husband and wife turn to each other and go, Ahaba, in each other's eyes, you know. It's that kind of love. But something weird happened. I don't understand this. I really don't. When he woke up the morning after his wedding, Rachel wasn't there. Leah was there. I don't know if the candle went out or what happened, but he was married to a different girl. Now, as we know, Leah was tender-eyed. Some think cross-eyed or weak-eyed. And I had a 3rd grade teacher that was cross-eyed. She could never control her pupils. And no, seriously, yeah. One of my friends was running down the hall. He ran right into her. She said, "Why don't you look where you go?" And he said, "Why don't you go where you're looking?" You know, she struggled with that. Well, anyway, what happened here is Jacob, through Leah, had 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Then they had another real strange custom where if you couldn't have a child, you could get your servant girl to come and have children through your husband, but they are kind of credited to you. Again, strange custom. This servant's girl's name was Bilhah, and she brought Dan and Naphtali. Then Leah said, "Well, now she can do this." And there's almost like a contest going on here, you know. And if she can do this, I can too. So she brought in Zilpah, her servant girl, and had Gad and Asher. Then Leah comes back, has a second litter. She has Issachar, Zebulun, and Dinah. Finally, Rachel comes along, has Joseph and Benjamin. Now, get the picture. Jacob is 147 years of age. You think your dads are old, okay? This guy is old. He's almost totally blind. He knows he's going to die. So he calls all his sons in. And he says, I need to tell you something. If you knew you're going to meet with your dad literally minutes before he was about to die, I promise you, he would tell you what was most important in his heart for you. And one by one, he brought his sons through, and some of the things he told them, very interesting. As Reuben, the eldest, knelt before his father, Jacob may have placed his hands on his shoulders and kind of strained through those eyes to look at him. And then we see in our passage here, Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, the excellency of power. In other words, Reuben, you're my first son. Your mother and I were so excited at your birth that we called you Reuben, which means see a son. That's what your name means. You see, Jehovah God promised my father Isaac and my grandfather Abraham that we would have so many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you couldn't even count them. More than all the stars in the sky. And Reuben, you were the beginning of my might, my strength. You gave me hope. Hope that God's promise was going to be fulfilled. Because you were my firstborn, of course, you're in line to be in charge of the family. You're to receive twice as much wealth in the inheritance and all your other brothers. You have an excellent position of power and authority. For years, Reuben, I was so proud of you. You could have been a great leader, but you blew it. You stepped over the line. And Reuben, I just want you to know that your character will be described in God's book for all to see. Look at verse 4. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed and defiled it. Then turning to the other sons, he said, he went up to my couch. What happened? Do you remember Bilhah? One of the servant girls? Reuben slept with her. He made one foolish choice that changed the entire direction of his life. Reuben had the opportunity to be great, but he lacked the character. He could have been a leader, but he chose to be a loser. Jacob's prophecy to Reuben started with everything he could have been and ended with what he chose to be. Reuben could have had all the privileges of the birthright. He could have been to be the head of a strong, powerful, wealthy leader of an entire nation. But by sleeping with his father's wife, he threw it all away. Now, Jacob possibly exposed his sin publicly to show his hatred of sin and to warn the others that one sinful act can destroy so much. Jacob basically took Reuben and lifted him up, putting all the ornaments of greatness on him. And then he cast him down for all to see what he threw away. Thou shalt not excel. Reuben, you're unstable. You're as unstable as water. Water can be very powerful. And it can be very damaging at the same time. His instability was seen in his lack of moral character. His instability was seen in his inconsistency. Water is unstable, can't stand on its own. It has to be supported. You've got to have it in a glass or in a bucket. You can't nail water to the wall, okay? It is unpredictable. No two ways are the same. Last night I saw the ocean. Every wave was different. No two snowflakes are the same. Snow, that white stuff comes down. Yeah, some of you have seen it. Water is inconsistent. It's controlled by the temperature around it. If it gets below 32 degrees, it turns to ice. If it gets above 180 degrees, it turns to steam. It's unpredictable. It always depends on some outward influence. Reuben was inconsistent. He is controlled by the spiritual temperature around him. He was just like those he was with. You see, Reuben was kind of like that beautiful, shiny red apple that's rotten on the inside. Everything looked great, but there's something missing. And here you are in a Christian college. Come on, you can walk around this campus and go home. Oh, yeah, they go to, Clearwater. But you know what's on the inside, even if nobody else in this world does. Are you rotten on the inside? Do you lack the character to be the leader that God wants you to be? He could have been a leader, but he chose to be a loser. He chose to be a loser with his sin. Look at chapter 35, verse 22. It came to pass when Israel dwelt in the land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine. This is Rachel's handmaid. Now get the picture here. Reuben was probably 18 or 19 years of age. This stepmom, I guess you could say, was probably about 28. Because in chapter 46 we see when they went to Egypt how many children they had in all. He was probably married by this time, maybe even had some kids. And Reuben chose to be immoral. Now, I will say this, these guys were surrounded by immorality. Jacob had 4 wives. 15-year-old Dinah was raped by Shechem. Simeon had a son by a Canaanite girl that was not his wife. Judah slept with a Canaanite girl when he was only 14. Judah also slept with a prostitute that turned out to be his daughter-in-law. These guys were surrounded by immorality. Sound familiar? You got Brittany, and you got Whitney, and you got Jennifer, and you got Janet, and you got your websites, you got your videos. Gang, we are surrounded by immorality in our world today. And don't you think that Satan wants to take you down? You're crazy if you don't. Whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. They're stupid. He that doeth it destroys his own soul. A wound and dishonor shall he get. His reproach shall not be wiped away. Does God forgive? Yes. Do you forget? No. And the consequences will be there. You say, but Rand, they didn't even have the 10 Commandments yet or whatever, did they? Did they have the rules? Did they know? Like Joseph, he goes to Egypt. Potiphar's wife says, lie with me. What was she talking about? Let's go downtown. You lie about your age. I'll lie about my weight. I don't think so, okay? She wanted him to go to bed, and he said, no, I'm not going to do this. Why? I'm not going to sin against my God. Had nothing to do with being kicked out of school, or embarrassing yourself. It's because he had a relationship with God, and he didn't want to disappoint him. You can choose your sin, but you cannot choose the consequences of your sin. Recently, I was at a church preaching. A former counselor, walked up to me. I didn't know him. He said, good to see you, Rand. My summer at the Wilds was the best summer of my entire life. I'm divorced now. You have 4 kids. It's my fault. It's so hard. Then I went from there to another meeting, and a guy walks up to me and says, Rand, you got to pray for me. He's a pastor. He said, my wife is divorcing me. I've lost my ministry. Because of my ministry at the Wilds, and most of you have been there and heard me preach on the dark side of the internet and try to warn teens of these evils, I get a ton of calls and emails. Can I just read you one email? How many of you would love to be in the ministry, maybe youth pastor, missionary, school teacher in the next 10 years? Let me see your hands. You say, I hope I get out of school by then. Yeah. How many of you want to be married someday? Girls, this is just for you. How many of you want to be married to some kind of jerk that messes around with other women? Let me see your hands. How many of you guys want to marry a girl and then about 4 or 5 years after you're married start messing around with other girls? You say, no way. None of these guys thought they would. They sat in places like this. Said, no, I'm going to live for God. I'm going to do what is right. And then because of this wicked world we live in, we choose to be a loser with our sin. Here's one young wife. She said, Dear Rand, I need help. A while ago, I had gone away to visit my grandmother. Soon after, I got the credit card bill in the mail, which my husband normally opens, but I opened it for some reason. There was a bill in it from Blockbuster Video. To make a long story short, my husband lied about the movies he watched. I felt uneasy in my heart, and I called the store a few weeks later and asked what we had rented. When she told me, my heart broke. Anyway, the other day I went to his email account and found a message from a girl I didn't know. I asked him about it, and he lied again, saying that he had met her in a Christian chat room, which is, if that's not bad enough, and was witnessing to her. I was upset. I said, if he was witnessing to her, why didn't he share it with me? And so forth. Later, I logged on to his instant messenger and found another girl's name. Actually, I had a whole conversation with her, though she thought I was my husband. It was sick. Apparently, they had met in several chat rooms and sessions and discussed very sexual things. I can't tell you how shocked I was. My husband. We don't even have a TV in our house. We've been very careful to take away such temptations as soon as we got married. Not because there was a problem, but because we wanted to please God and keep pure. There's so many little lies that he has told me. They're all running through my head. How do I know this isn't just another lie because I caught him? I'm so afraid to trust him again. I don't want to get hurt again. I feel like a fool for believing him. All my respect for him is now gone. How can I listen to him when he preaches? How can I not feel angry when the kids in the youth group comment on what a godly example he is to them? I'm struggling with being very angry at any girl I see who is immodest. I feel ugly, unloved. Though he says that he does love me and it was not personal. Rand, I don't want to get bitter. I've met bitter people before. It's repulsive, aside from being a sin against God. What can I do so that I don't get bitter and resentful? I love my husband so much. I want to have a happy marriage. Would you please help us? That is a tough letter to answer. And if some of you continue in the way that you're sneaking around even now, thinking that all this stuff is hidden, then guys, your wife's going to write me an email or a letter just like it. You have every opportunity to be great leaders for God. What kind of choice are you going to make? He chose to be a loser. This is Reuben with his stand. You don't have to turn there, but in Genesis 37, verse 21, there's a phrase in that verse that says, Reuben heard it. Reuben was not taken seriously. Because he was so weak and so unstable, his brothers had absolutely no problem talking about what they're going to do to Joseph in his presence. Here he comes. Here comes the dreamer. Let's kill him. Right in front of Reuben. They had no problem. Why? Because he had absolutely no character to take a stand against it. My kids went to a public high school, and I remember Josh went into a class one time and it got real quiet. There's a teacher who's known for his foul mouth, cursed all the time. When Josh walked in, it got quiet, and one of the other students talking to the teacher said, hey, how come you clean up your mouth when Josh walks in? And the teacher said, because he's a Christian and a gentleman, and he deserves my respect. And some of you guys, even in the dorm, you can talk about trash right in the presence of others, and they don't stop talking when you walk into the room. If that's true, man, you got a stinking testimony. Because they're not scared that you would take a stand against it. Reuben had his limits, but he quickly compromised. He delivered Joseph out of their hands. Good step, Reuben. He knew that his brothers were going too far. He was weak, but he had his limits. He spoke up against murder. Let us not kill him, us, do you notice? Shed no blood, lay no hand upon him. Let's not kill him, be personally guilty for his death. Let's just throw him in this pit. Let him die naturally. At least it won't be us, okay? Reuben wanted to stop this. He actually wanted to get him out of there and take him back to Dad. But he was scared to death of his brothers. He wanted to fit in. And guys, if you live your life trying to fit in, guess what you'll do? You're going to fit in. But there's not many out there who have a heart for God and that hate sin. So what are you going to fit into? A girl talked to me recently, a teenager. She said, Rand, I want so badly to be accepted. I went to a party the other night, and I had a beer, and I held it in my hands, and I put it to my lips, but I never drank. Like that's okay? Like that's good? Trying to live on the edge so you fit in with everybody? Reuben tried to secretly do what was right without his wicked brothers knowing about it. His fear of his own brothers and what they would do to him kept him from doing what is right and simply taking Joseph back to his dad. Just, guys, you're idiots. We're not going to kill our brother. Come on, Joseph. We're going home. He wouldn't do that. And some of you, you know you're right in the midst of a friend who's making some very foolish decisions. You step back and say, well, maybe he'll just pass away. Maybe he'll just get over it. I'm not going to say anything. It's not going to pass away. And that same friend may end up blowing their mind on porn or even drink or drugs. Reuben was too late. I don't know where he was when they sold Joseph. But when he came back, Joseph was gone. You get like 9 months, okay? How many of you are freshmen? Let me see your hands, okay? Sophomore? Junior? Senior? You get 9 months and only a few minutes each day, aside from your studies and so forth, to have any kind of impact on your friends. That's it. 9 months. You'll never be a sophomore again. Well, some of you will, but most of you will never be a sophomore again. Is it going to be too late for that roommate that chooses to go home and get a job and ends up in major sin and then just doesn't want to come back to school, and now he has this job and he has this truck and never does anything for God? And like you got an opportunity as a roommate or on his hall or in his class to have an impact on him? Reuben, he was a loser in the way he dealt with his sin, with his stand, and also with his selfishness. You know, the timing of Reuben's sinful choices could not have been worse. His father Jacob was going through one of the most difficult times of his life. Right during this time, when Reuben slept with this girl, Jacob had to meet Esau. The last time Jacob was in the presence of Esau, you know what Esau said? When the mourning for our father is over, I will slay my brother Jacob. I'm going to kill him. Now Esau is this mighty leader of an army, bringing 400 men to meet Jacob. Do you not think that Jacob's scared? Right about this time, Rachel died. And I don't know if you've ever stood with a parent or stood at a casket of a mom or dad who's no longer with you, and you think your heart's broke. Can you imagine your mom, your dad losing their best friend? Right around this time, they had to go and bury Jacob's dad. So he loses his wife and his dad, and his brother's coming, and Reuben didn't care. He sinned anyway. And some of you, I don't even think you think about your mom and dad. Do you know they're people too? And some of you are so like bent out of shape because mom wants to keep in control. Well, like she's been a mom for 20 years, and now you go off to college, and that what she could do and could do well, she can't do anymore because you're gone. You think she has an attitude? She's hurting. She's scared. Your sin can break the heart of your folks. Yeah. Girls, your sin can rip the heart out of your dad. Just suppose you had to sit down with your dad, crying, and say, Dad, I'm pregnant and I don't know what to do. Would you remember when you were little, you used to wear those little earrings, that little necklace that Daddy's little girl? Hey, come on. You will always be Daddy's little girl. And now you tell him something like this, you might as well take your hand, reach in and rip his heart out because you were hurting that much. Reuben didn't care. He didn't care about he didn't care about nobody except himself. He could have been a leader. He chose to be a loser. Charlie was one of my best friends. Amber and I had just gotten married, and Charlie and Alma, they're in our church, and neither one of us had kids at the time. Every Sunday, we'd either go to our house or their house and just spend a lot of time together. He was the youth director in our church. He was the church treasurer, sat in the front. Everybody loved Charlie. He was a great guy. We went out to eat pizza one night, and he ordered green peppers. Now, is that a big deal? No, but it was because his wife hated green peppers. And I knew that. I looked at Charlie, and Alma said, Charlie, he said, you can pick them off. All week long. That troubled me. So the next weekend, I kind of into dirt bikes, and I said, hey, come on up, Charlie. We're going to ride some of the trails around the wilds. And we got on the bikes and headed down to the big lake down there, and we're sitting on the bridge looking. I said, Charlie, last Sunday you ordered green peppers on your pizza. He said, so? Well, you never did stuff like that before. You know your wife hates that. What do you mean she can pick it off? Is there something going on between you and your wife? And he just dropped his head. Charlie, are you seeing another woman? He started to weep. Charlie was so addicted to pornography during all this time. He was running around getting prostitutes. He finally was busting up another home, sleeping with this woman. He dropped out of church. When Elma would come, I said, "Is Charlie at home?" She said, "Yeah." I'd leave church and race to his house, open the door. And there was a couple of times I couldn't even talk. I just put my hands on his shoulders and I just stood there and I wept. "Charlie, why?" He finally divorced his wife, messed up another home. And then I got the phone call. Charlie's in the hospital. He took a revolver and put it against his heart, pulled the trigger. He was still living. I went into the hospital and I just shook my head and said, "Charlie, why?" He lived through that. A few months ago, I got another call. Charlie raped a girl in Brevard. He got caught and he's in prison right now. He could have been a great leader, gang, but he chose to be a loser. I'm not trying to be mean, but some of you are heading down the same trail. As we close, Reuben thought that he got away with his sin. It had been 40 years since Reuben slept with Bilhah, and now it's remembered against him. Reuben did not find out until the end of his father's life just how much his father was disappointed and displeased with him. Reuben thought he was successful at covering his sin for a very long time. If he just would have confessed it. Said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I sinned against God. I sinned against you." But he didn't. Now here he is, standing in front of his dad. His dad's hand on his shoulder said, "Reuben, thou shalt not excel." Every knee shall bow before God. And when we do, your teachers, your mom, your dad, your friends are not going to be there. It's like you and God, and that's it. And what are you covering that will come out then? He could have been a leader, but he chose to be a loser. One foolish choice. I hope that does not happen to you. Let's pray.